Hello, and welcome to Behind the Headset. And today we are graced with the presence of the creator of hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. It's Anton Hand. How are we doing, Anton?
Doing wonderfully.
Good. We do like to hear that. And hopefully you will still be doing wonderfully after we've done what we're going to do today. Because what we're going to do is we're going to try and learn a little bit more about you as a person, rather than talking about the VR itself. So, 3 sets of questions. First section's about you. Second section's about VR and gaming. And the third one's a fun little questionnaire created by a French journalist. So, let's get straight into it with your first question, which is, tell me something about you that I don't know.
Something about me that you don't know. That you definitely don't know. My goodness. Right off the bat, I'm all right. You probably don't know that I was a train kid. Like in all of the different ways that conjures a mental image. Train hat, train lantern, train whistle, osh gosh bagosh overalls. As much of a train kid as someone could be, that was me.
So here in the UK, that would be called a train spotter, is what we have.
Okay.
So would you be like on this platform watching the trains as they come in, or is this just at
Oh
home?
my every little opportunity. I loved being in the presence of them. I loved seeing them. I loved hearing them, riding on them. I was absolutely obsessed from probably early age 3 until embarrassingly late.
Has it actually finished, or are we still there?
I mean, I still adore I mean, it's still one of those sorts of things that if I'm lucky enough to be at a stoplight, like at a train crossing and a train passes, I will roll my windows down and turn off the car so that there isn't an interfering sound so that I can fully experience it. It is a true sensory joy for me,
That
must
is
say.
wonderful. That is beautiful. That really is, that someone can get so much joy out of just such a simple thing as well. That's really cool, man. All right. So when you were young, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh my goodness, I mean, being a train kid, the very first thing was I wanted to be an engineer until I found out that, of course, wasn't quite the same thing it used to be. Because I was, of course, reading and watching lots of anachronistic things,
Hmm.
related to them. But then following that, I went through a whole bunch. I had the astronaut phase for a while. I wanted to be an inventor for a period of time, especially like I was obsessed with Leonardo da Vinci for a while and the idea of the like like the idea of the artist in this very sort of broad spectrum way that an artist wasn't just someone who made pictures but understood the world through the creation of pictures and envisioned future ideas and devices and things like that through encoding them as drawings, um, as a component of like that being the center of the inventing process. So, and then later on, as I aged, I wanted to be an animator for a
Hmm.
while, and that was what really like drove me, in terms of making digital art, probably between the age of like 10 and undergrad.
Okay, that's cool. So inventor, was there? Did you actually invent anything apart from the games that you've been doing, or was there?
I mean, I definitely, no, not in terms of like I have filed a patent or something
No,
like
but
that.
yeah.
And I think part of the joy of being a game maker is that you
Hmm.
get to exercise a lot of those same muscles. It's the sort of
Mm.
loop between like envisioning this completely idiosyncratic thing that does not exist, that is a combination of visual components and code and logic and engineering and getting specialized hardware to do novel and specific things and realizing an entire universe through that. So
Yeah.
really I get to do a form of the thing that I have, largely always wanted to do.
I'd say I'm in complete awe of the majority of developers. The most I can do is a bit of PowerShell scripting for my day job, but apart from that, I have no idea. It's just like magic things work. Well done. That's where I come with.
I mean, it's
Okay.
just that with many more steps.
I'm sure it may well be, but there are a lot more steps that I would have to learn to get there, I think, which is good. Okay. So, what is your most treasured memory from your childhood?
Single most treasured memory. Let me think about that for one moment.
That's cool.
I want something good here.
Was there something that instantly popped in, or?
No, I mean it's as I said, like because of the fact that I've been an artist from a young age and I've had many obsessions, like it would be easier if you could just slightly collapse the question to an age
Okay.
range.
Okay, let's say between the
What do you
age
mean by
of.
childhood?
So I would say anything before the age of, let's say, 10.
Okay, cool. Well, before the age of 10, I would probably have to say then that as a collection of actually no, I know what it is. It would probably be the period of time that I made the first ever animation I ever did.
Mm-hmm.
Which occurred at the age of 9. It was on the first computer that we had. That my father sort of lucked his way into having, because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to afford such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was we had this program called Microsoft Fine Artist that had a slideshow function. It ran in DOS. It had a slideshow functionality. You could like string 8 to 10 pictures together. And I tried to full blown frame at a time do an animation with it that was like
Mm-hmm.
based on several video games at the time. There's like a section that was based on Super Metroid and a section that was based on Star Fox. I didn't have either of those games, by the way. So it was mainly like an idea of what those games might have been from like looking at screenshots of them in game magazines while standing at a bookstore. And of course, like because these were just uncompressed bitmap images, like computers back then did not have much RAM. So the
I'm
actual
well
program could
aware.
only so the actual program could only hold like 12 or 16 of those images in at a time. But my father was a videographer. And so he helped me
Oh.
over that summer basically capture using a VHS deck that whole animation one frame at a time. I think it played at either 3 or 5 frames per second. We set it to music from one of my favorite video games at the time, which was a expansion pinball table called Nova to Silverball Pinball, also a DOS game. But I loved the song from that. And so yeah, it was the first animation that I ever made at length beyond, flip books
Mm-hmm.
written on post-it note stacks. And it was just a wonderful summer project that I did with my father. And it has always stuck with me. It was the first like really big, and just the amount of focus that it requires to do. It was like 1,200 individual drawings. I had never done
Wow.
something of that scope before, and I did it in the summer in between fourth and fifth grade.
What were
And
you
yeah,
drawing on? Was that in the program as well, or was that a different?
yeah, it was basically the slideshow functionality of Fine Artist was just allowed you to use the painting application
Okay.
and string a bunch of things. So it's probably if I had to guess, it would probably be like an 800 by 600 pixel raster image that you're just painting into, and it was probably up to like 64 or 128 colors,
Mm.
if memory serves.
That sounds
So,
about
and
right
it
for that
actually
time.
and it
Yeah.
had it did have some primitive like stamping and object grouping. It could only handle 1 or 2 layers. So you could definitely like draw a character in a pose and then drag them into a new position in a copy of an image and like rotate it, and it would look gnarly because it like you've rotated pixels sort of thing. So there was a lot of looking back, there was a lot of visual artifacting with it. It was very primitive in many ways, but um yeah.
Okay. That's. I don't remember that particular program because I'm old. I'm 47, so I remember DOS and I remember all that sort of stuff. And this is not a program I remember, which is really interesting. I'm going to have to look this up. I'm going to have to find out what that was. All right. So you're going to be hosting a dinner party. And at this dinner party, you can invite any 3 people you like. They can be living, they can be dead, they can be real, they can be fictional. Who are you inviting to your dinner party?
Oh my goodness. This one's difficult, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
like I've always been a bit of a, we'll politely say, a firebrand sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so, the pragmatic solution here for me to something like this, if I have the magical genie power, is to what would be the most not get banned from social media way to say this? Engineer an imploding sub situation. with the
Yes.
3 people who I would like to be in that sub, and I'll just leave it to you to use your imagination who those 3 real life people would be. And so we can just take that one as what my real answer would be if
That's
presented
cool.
with this object. We can just push that one to the side
Right.
and then
That will
put a
be
more
on behind the headset after dark. We'll do that one.
exactly. But beyond the you don't waste a good opportunity of magic sort of thing and put something, um, you know, I mean, if it's just purely a like I get to talk to 3 people who have ever existed
Yeah.
in real or imagination, and I can magically communicate with them, that there isn't a linguistic or jargonal uh,
Nope.
barrier here, sort of thing. Like one of them would have to be Leonardo da Vinci because
Hmm.
I would have to know. I'm gonna be so boring because it would all just be Renaissance people. It'd be Da Vinci, and probably Caravaggio because he was crazy, like nuttier than a bag of hammers, and I would just love to experience the mind and probably the visceral pain behind those paintings because it just sort of filled my imagination for so long, um as a kid. And I don't know beyond that. I don't know, probably Jesus because he wasn't real and that would be fun, especially if he was like the Rick and
And
Morty version of
actually,
Jesus, like with
I believe there is, and I read this somewhere a long time ago. There's actually more evidence that a man called Jesus existed than there is for one of the Roman emperors. So he existed. There was a man called that.
oh, I'm
Whether he did the other
absolutely sure.
stuff, who knows?
Of course, someone named that or with a close name to that,
Sure.
you know that legend is an amalgamation. I mean, we could just long
Yeah.
conversation to have, but
That's
in this case, I quite mean the creation of white Jesus, the one in all of the pictures. That one is the one that I would love to, especially if he was like riding a velociraptor and had an M60 machine gun in each thing. So American white Jesus. That would be my third, just because he'd scare the shit out of Da Vinci at the table, and that would be fun to watch.
it would. Yes, I would like to come to that dinner party just to see how that went. Oh,
Yeah.
that is quite possibly one of the most diverse selections of people we've had from that question so far, which I
Yeah.
really
And you know
like.
what? Last addendum, I definitely make sure that he was like white Jesus with the sufficient amount of like twink hotness to him so that Da Vinci was also conflicted and really aroused by him.
This is amazing. All right then. Well, this
What I'm
might.
saying is I throw really great dinner parties.
No, do you know what? I cannot wait for an invite myself when the next one happens. It sounds incredible. All right. So this may lead into this question quite well. So this question is, what would you like to change about yourself?
I mean, I'm already engaged in in a personal transformation that is centered
Hmm.
on sort of like on fitness, on how I live, on how I eat, the amount of physical activity that I
Hmm.
do. In part because, for a host of personal reasons, I had found myself in a really, really bad mental and physical place
Hmm.
over the past couple years. And it hit that scary part. Like I'm 40 and when you're in your late 30s and you're not taking care of yourself at all, you tend to run into like spiraling health issues that feed upon each other, and the amount of time between sort of flare-ups of that collapses from an oscillation to just a solid tone, and that
Yeah.
becomes your existence. And you have to make the decision about like whether you want to still be here or not, or do the hard and immediate thing. And so I thankfully made the right decision in regards to that, and it is ongoing. As we're sitting here having this conversation, I'm staring to my side at my barbell that will be being used for deadlifts later, which means that then tomorrow and the day after I probably won't be able to walk again, because that is what leg day is currently doing to me, is making it so that I have to crawl up the stairs on all fours the next day to get to bed. But that means I'm getting the work done. And so So yeah, that is as I was saying or jokingly said earlier on one of my socials. Ugh, make bad thoughts go away by lifting heavy circle, and when the bad thoughts get loud, find bigger heavy circle to lift. And that's sort of how I'm getting day to day at the moment.
Sure. I mean, you and I are very much on the same journey in that front. So I've been following your progress of doing all that on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it these days, or not, or Blue Sky, which I believe you're using more now than you are going to be using Twitter. See,
we can
I
call
pay
it
attention.
we can call it good Twitter and bad Twitter.
Good Twitter and bad Twitter. Space Karen is certainly doing a number on it. Yeah, but you and I, like I said, we're very much on the same journey on that front as well. I've started doing the same thing. We've kind of, thumbs up in each other across the socials for us both doing it. It's really cool. I really like that. All right. So, how do you deal with criticism?
Well, I mean, first we have to dissect and we have to ask, we have to go, what is criticism? Because there is capital C criticism. There are people who communicate an idea that they have, and then they make an assertion along with that idea, and it is coherent. And then there is noise. And to make any modern product nowadays is to deal with a lot of noise from people who can't communicate and can't think. And because they can't think, they can't write. And because they can't write, you have no idea what the hell they're saying. And then there's a sort of second group that knows just enough about those things to be exceptionally annoying, and is usually weaponizing them, to an ulterior motive. And I think that's the most difficult thing of dealing with criticism nowadays, is actually diving into a sea of noise and actually finding the people who are making a good faith communication of they have an idea about your product and they want it to be improved in a certain way. And then separating from those sorts of things, what is realistic, what is economically feasible, what actually represents some sort of diffuse desire of a meaningful enough amount of your community to be worth pursuing, and what is just random people with you put 100 people in in a room who play games and go, what do you want to see in a first person shooter? And you're going to get 100 different ideas. And most of those are not going to overlap. And a good chunk of them, just because a person can express a thing doesn't mean that they want it if you could snap your fingers and give it to them. And so yeah, it is about finding needles in haystacks, is how I always describe dealing with criticism. And I have so many years of practice now. Like maybe the best and worst idea I ever had when I started this whole project was I'm just going to have the notifications for all these social platforms, like the YouTube channel, just go right to my phone so that I receive them instantaneously.
Why, Anton? Why would you do this?
Yeah, because you build a callus for it that becomes a superpower in a really big way. I know a lot of creators, people who've been creating for as long as I have, and they get one raw shitty comment phrased just the right way, and it emotionally devastates them. And the getting to the point as a creator where it actually all just bounces off you like Teflon, unless you choose forward to reach and grab that thing and be like, ooh, this is interesting. It's a one-way thing. You find yourself on the other side of that and you're like, wow, I've arrived. And it's a great place to be, and it's a very productive place to be as a creator. And not everyone gets to this place, and it's it's sort of a walking on coals sort of thing. And it's
yeah, that's cool. All right then. So, what sort of routine do you follow daily, if any type of routine at all?
So this is probably going to get a number of people very angry, but I'll just provide it. So I wake up every morning somewhere between 6:40 and 7:10 in the morning without an alarm. I just spring to consciousness after a wonderful night's sleep. And After a wonderful and whole and largely uninterrupted night's sleep, now I get up, I take a walk in the morning, most of the time heading over to a cafe that is
Hmm.
in my area. Have like some of the best cold brew I've ever had on the planet. Sit there with my sketchbook and sort of like write out, whatever might be relevant to what I want to think about for the first part of the day. Um, Come home, finally then actually sit down at my computer for the first time, usually do the social rounds. So that's both the social media rounds, seeing if there's any interesting comments, support requests, questions that have come in, issues in the Discord community, and that's usually 1 to 2 hours of work every day,
Hmm.
for me. And usually along that ways, I'm also collating issues into one of my many to-do lists for game related work. um, I have a first meal sometime between 11 in the morning and noon because I do sort of like loose
Okay.
intermittent fasting.
Hmm.
So that's usually the first time I eat. And then following that, I then dive into actual sort of like Unity and design document work. And I work throughout the afternoon typically until it's roughly time for, and with breaks interspersed for working out, taking more walks because I try to walk between 3 and 5 times a day.
Hmm.
Usually, what my mental break at this point while I'm working, like if I'm stuck on an idea or something like that, is I get up and I do one set of some exercise completely to concentric rep failure. So
Okay.
shoulder presses, bench presses. I don't tend to do leg day stuff outside of leg day.
Hmm.
I do cable, like hanging, wooden ring rows, things like that. Whatever is the least sore that I wish to make hurt. I basically just go as hard as I can on that one exercise, sit down and continue working. And that is how I've largely eliminated snacking as a
Mm.
habit. Because they're both just dopamine seeking behaviors for me, and so I've replaced an unhealthy one with a healthy one. And then usually after dinner, after that second meal and second walks, I'm either doing something social gaming wise with a couple friends. I play Fortnite several times a week with a business partner of mine. Yes, it is like the one multiplayer game I play is Fortnite. Uh, or I just do some more work, or I do some reading, or I work out some more and
Oh,
repeat. That is
yeah.
largely the shape of and then I do some weekend things. But
Hmm.
that's my daily, call that my work day routine, five
Sure.
days a week.
Yeah, that's cool. Again, it's interesting. Some people do, and some people really don't have a routine, and it's quite surprising to find. Sometimes the people you think do are the ones who really don't as well, which I find really interesting. And I've discovered that having these conversations with people really strange, but it's good.
Yeah. So the funny part is that I was never a routine person. I was just
Hmm.
a like chaos goblin, in a really, really big way. And then the process of like losing weight through calorie restriction and fixing my sleep and
Hmm.
like not over consuming stimulants fixed the sleep. And the moment the sleep was fixed, suddenly a whole bunch of my volitional issues were fixed. And I just fell into a significantly more ordered routine sort of auto magically.
Yeah.
So
No, I'm very much falling into that myself as well over the past year. So I know exactly what you mean by that one. All right then. So, who has inspired you the most?
I'm trying to think because I really truly try not to put people on pedestals
Hmm.
because they have continued to disappoint me in life. Um, in ideologically,
Sure.
in behaviors. And so, um, my goodness, it sounds so shitty and black pilled to say, but no one comes to mind.
Which is a perfectly fine answer. Again, the way that I've written these questions is there is no wrong or right answer, and it's all about you and what you feel and that sort of thing. So that's all perfectly fine. I thought you were going to say Da Vinci.
Actually,
Uh,
here, the only one that comes to mind, Jean-Luc Picard.
that is Let's make that so. That's an excellent suggestion. That's really good. Cool. You'll be glad to know, Anton, that is the first section over. We have learned an awful lot about you through that, I think. I think it's really good. So we're going to move on to section 2, which is about VR and gaming, because that's how we know each other, and that's how everyone who's watching or listening knows us. So but the first question, this is, what was your first experience in gaming?
My very first experience in gaming. My very first experience in gaming was that I have memory of
Mm-hmm.
was in 3rd grade. I was in the Buffalo Public School System for 1 year. There was it might have been the library of the school. There were 2 monochrome Apple computers, either Apple or IBM computers of some
Mm-hmm.
configuration, monochrome green, very Fallout style. And there was a learning game that was about sequential action where you input a series of commands to move a frog across lily pads. You would be like up, right, up,
Mm-hmm.
left, right, etc. And you had a limited number of registers that you could put those commands in. But the path slightly changed. So you had to get further into it. You had to figure out a set of commands that essentially worked for multiple parts of this diagonal path to see how
Mm-hmm.
far you could go. Um, and that is my first memory of playing something that we would call a computer game. And I was
Mm-hmm.
deeply fascinated by it and was super into it. And I have no idea what it was called. I've always wondered what it was called. I've never been able to like find it ever since, but I have a very vivid memory of it.
Have you thrown that question out on the socials? Because I bet someone will know if you do.
I I don't think I've ever like I've had this sort of conversation once or twice with
Mm-hmm.
someone else when they brought up this topic, but then never remembered to do so.
Okay, that's cool. I will remind you when we finish, so you can do it there and then, because I'll remember. So that'll be good. So in that case, what was your first experience in VR?
My first experience in VR was, I mean, if we're excluding, you know what? I don't think I actually ever tried the Virtual Boy. I saw the Virtual
Mm-hmm.
Boy, the Nintendo headset in a magazine, but never actually looked through it, so that wouldn't count. And so the first experience with VR I ever had was at the University of Buffalo at the tail end of my sophomore year of undergrad when I was about to drop out. Didn't end up dropping out, but I was just about to for a host of reasons. And it was recommended to me that I check out a bunch of stuff in a neighboring department. I was in fine arts, and the department in question was the digital media studies department. And there was a low cost cave configuration rear screen projection VR system over there. And I went over and got to check it out. Put on a pair of polarized glasses, have a magnetic tracker on my head, and it was the coolest thing that I had ever experienced, period, in life. And to the degree that it kept me in undergrad, I registered for classes that allowed me to make things for it, and it
Mm-hmm.
sort of defined the entire shape of my life from then on in.
So that moment, ladies and gentlemen, is what gave us what we have from Anton these days. By the sound of it, that's really cool.
Yes, you have a professor of computer science who was a graduate student at UB whose name I do not remember to thank, who I was taking his comp sci intro class for majors because I was just bored at that
Mm-hmm.
point. And he was like, "What is this angry goth kid who makes chainmail in the back of my lecture hall that like 2/3 of this class fail it, and he's not even taking notes. Who is this kid?" And I told him what I was interested in and wasn't finding it anywhere at the university. And he was like, "There's this interesting stuff happening over in media study. Let me introduce you to some people." And had that not moment not happened, I would have dropped out of undergrad.
Wow, that's again. I think a lot of people from their like school days have like that one teacher that they always remember about how they pushed them to the right way and saw something in them and that sort of thing. I definitely have that with one myself. So yeah. So what has been your favorite experience that you've had in VR?
That's a hard one. It's because it's probably I don't know. I don't think anything has made me like I'm weird in that I think the thing that I privilege the most in VR is things that make me laugh more
Hmm.
than anything else. And so I have an irrational love for the Aperture Hand Labs demo.
I
I've
love that.
probably done it 4 or 5 times, and
Mm.
because I adore physical comedy, I love stand-up comedy, I love shticks, I love bits, and so and there is, like, the beauty of any digital character within a virtual space is how vital and how real they feel, um, in your presence compared to experiencing them through a stationary rectangle or a handheld one, and it's and I find it the because of that, the amplification of physical comedy is so much more. And so probably that. It's still the thing that I keep going, will someone else please make anything at all that makes me laugh as
Hmm.
much as this did? Even though I'm wholly aware of just like the complete financial infeasibility of that. It's literally
Sure.
diametrically opposite from whatever is financially feasible to make as VR entertainment, which is probably part of the reason why it's my like
Yeah.
my white whale.
It's funny you mentioned humor in games, and it's kind of I feel like in the sort of early '80s there were a lot of games that were funny. You had like the LucasArts stuff, a lot of that was genuine comedy stuff, and
That there's a very
most
specific reason for that. All the people who made those games read books.
yeah, that's probably very true.
They read books instead of growing up playing video games.
Yeah.
Instead, culturally, we experience the cultural equivalent of Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox of a
Mm.
Xerox. It's a whole bunch of people who make games who only grew up consuming like games as and like mass corporate movies as culture. So of course they have no idea like how to write, how to be funny, or how to have like an idea.
I'm going to give you a game recommendation of something that came out this year.
Hmm.
Right now, I'm going to say it. So I played this without knowing anything about it, apart from a friend of mine said, "I think you'll like this. It's funny," and they don't play games. Um, it's called "Thank Goodness You're Here." It's about
Okay.
2 hours long. I didn't know anything about it. I live streamed it when I just literally fired it up, live streamed it. I haven't laughed so hard at a video game in years. So I would highly recommend you play that.
Son, you know what? I think someone else had given me this recommendation as
Okay.
well, and I'd completely forgotten about it.
Well,
So
there
thank
you
you.
go. No, you're very welcome. Okay. On the flip side of that question, then, what has been your worst experience in VR?
Ooh, worst experience in VR. There've been so many because I'm one of those people who is made ill very, very easily, despite the fact that I've been
Oh.
doing this for literally more than 20 years. I can't play most smooth locomotion, WASD movement VR games. And when I do play them, I basically have to very, very carefully not strafe. I
Oh,
will
wow.
actually typically, like if I want to really play a smooth locomotion game, I'll go into the Steam VR input bindings and unbind the horizontal axis
Oh, wow.
of the movement so I can only move forward or forward and back and not laterally via artificial locomotion because it's day ruining for me.
Wow.
Um yeah, I've always been very I've never enjoyed roller coasters.
Hmm.
Even swinging on a regular swing is very, very, very intense for me,
Oh,
from a
wow.
motion standpoint. So yeah, my understanding is a lot of those differences have to do with like inner ear geometry and like how full versus not full the little cavity that tiny little crystals bounce around
Hmm.
inside your inner ear that is like how your body senses a whole bunch of internal motion. So I'm clearly on the sensitive side. So all of my
Wow.
worst experiences in VR have nothing to do with content. They have to do with like someone did something stupid or I hit a button wrong or what have you, and then I spent hours on the couch being violently ill
Yeah, that's
afterwards.
not fun. Does that include like smooth turning or?
Oh my god, it's even worse.
Oh, okay.
I can't like we have smooth turning in H3, and the way that
Mm.
I test it is I would literally just wear the HMD canted up on my head so only one eye could half see the screen so that enough of that visual information was blocked out that it didn't hit me intuitively, but I can't.
Oh
Yeah, if I
wow.
accidentally smooth turn in a VR game, just that single motion, it feels like falling sideways off a bridge. I'm just done.
Wow. See, we had someone say anyone in VR uses smooth turning, and I'm like, it's not true. It's not
Yeah,
true.
absolutely. It's not true whatsoever. I mean, it's a like usually people who say that are one of two things. They're people who are ideologically attached to feeling that like that VR games where you move like that are real games and
Hmm.
everything isn't, or they're idiots. So, or both.
Those
So,
two things do
um,
not have to be separate. That is true. So,
and it's one of those like I sell a product too. A whole bunch of the things that I believe and share are obviously rooted in my own, priorities as an entrepreneur.
sure.
But importantly, like with a whole lot of things, I also just like don't really like care. And so I'm
Mm,
feel totally comfortable just be like VR has like in the way that like every genre niche of games. And that's at this point, like if you had been like, is VR a genre of a game or is it a medium in 2016, I would have like as an artist planted a flag and said it's a medium, but the market has largely like erased most
mm,
of like the interesting art being done with it because no
yeah.
one wanted to pay any money for it. So VR at this point is more like a genre of a game, like a real-time strategy game or a sliding tile puzzle game. And the thing
Hmm.
about game niches is that they tend to like become more and more navel-gazy as they sort of reflect off of the demands of the loudest enthusiasts. And
Hmm.
the loudest enthusiasts in VR have been people who like want to play very, very viscerally fast and intense smooth locomotion games, and those people's desires get privileged over everyone else's because they spend the most money on those games and they're the loudest about it. And so
Yeah.
that's what we get. And everyone who can't handle that gets to fuck off.
Yeah, I
So
would
for better or
say
for worse.
no. I
And
see
that's
where you're coming from
and
on
that's
that one.
the fragment of a nascent medium that has been decimated that we are left with.
All right then. So you might have answered the next question. That is, when you're trying a new game, whether it be VR or a flat game, what instantly turns you on or off to that?
I mean, the list of things that turn me off is so voluminous at this point. We could literally do just an entire podcast episode on it because I'm so cranky and I'm so tired. And a lot of it has to do with that like Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox thing
Hmm.
is that like and just being, I've taught game design. I've been inside the headspace of a designer for so long with these sorts of things that like what turns me on is when I am surprised. What turns me
Hmm.
on is when I'm part of the way into a tutorial and I realize I have no idea at all what is going to happen next because it almost never happens. And I
Hmm.
become just immediately enraptured in a game like that. So, like, an example, like, one of my fondest game playing memories of the past year was playing Raft after it had hit 1.0 with a friend.
Hmm.
We did it as a two-player thing, and I realized part of the way into it, even though the survival crafting loop was familiar and I'm building a thing and all of that is rote and nice, but as things kept coming over the horizon, islands of shapes, I was like, this isn't telegraphing to me at all what
Mm.
is going to happen next. And when the first like narrative-centric island came over the horizon, and I was like, wait, this is also like a point and click adventure game that is using the verbiage of a survival crafting game, but there's uniquely authored narrative content. I was like, I have no idea what is going to happen next. And it was just delightful for me. So
Yeah.
that is what absolutely gets me. And what doesn't get me is when I open something and I'm like, the entire purpose of this game is pseudo work, and it is
Right.
giving me and it is not giving me any true reward for that other than the reward a slot machine is. Like if I
Yeah.
would rather just pull the you know
Yeah. Pull the arm on the
lever on a
one-armed
slot
bandit.
machine
Yeah.
and just to save myself some time and work. Like if the highest reward that your game gives me is a number goes up and some blinky sounds happen, then I don't have space for it in my life.
Yeah. No, I'm very much. Story always hooks me. I find like a really good story will hook me and keep me playing if I become invested in stuff. But I'm very much like, give me a reason to care. Because if I don't, I'm just not going to bother anymore. That's kind of
Yeah.
where I am with that sort of thing. All right. So, what do you think right now is the most beneficial hardware or software advancement in VR?
What is the most beneficial hardware or software advancement in VR? I don't really know. I'm going to give you a backwards sort of
Okay.
answer for this. So I think the most impactful hardware and software moment I have had
Hmm.
recently has been experiencing the Vision Pro.
Okay.
And for reasons that you might not expect. I love the work that they put into it. I think it's truly impressive. Everyone on those teams deserves immense kudos, and I think it's shockingly meaningless. And that was the part that was like so incredible about using the Vision Pro was that prior to that moment, if you had sat me down and been like, what do you think the biggest barriers to mass adoption of VR
Hmm.
are? And I would have made a list of a whole bunch of things
Hmm.
that they ended up then executing masterfully. And I put that all on and experienced it as a whole device and realized that I wanted it off my head as fast as I possibly could, and that I had no reason to put it on a second time, and that there was nothing I wanted to do while wearing the device,
Mm.
despite trying a little bit of this and a little bit of that. That for me, and I think a lot of people obsess about resolution and latency and feedback and this and that, as because these are quantifiable things
Hmm.
that are all conceptualizable. I can imagine what a sharper screen looks like. I can imagine what better controller tracking will feel like and perfect depth occlusion. What I can't imagine is a piece of software that doesn't exist yet
Hmm.
that would make me want to wear that thing for more than 3 minutes. Like, because it is a thing that does not exist, and
Hmm.
it's a thing that has not yet been conceptualized. And
Sure.
so it was a reality call and a wake up of realizing that like that that VR, that XR as a whole space, I feel like, is
Hmm.
trapped in a little bit of incrementalism,
Right.
of obsessing over types of numbers go up situations and other numbers go down. And while those are all like they're the minimum viable bedrock that has to be laid, like at the end of the day, like nothing from an XR standpoint as an application has come close, has come into the same universe of utility as like the backup camera in your car, that was
Right.
so useful that in the US like became a legal requirement for
Hmm.
vehicles to have, because it's so breathtakingly useful and life-saving as a technology. And so far, the entire XR space has not managed to come up with a single thing that comes even close to something like that. And it's the sort of thing we need if everyone is going to shift from a pocket rectangle to, goober goggles.
Hmm. Cool. Your audio just went a little crackly there. I think I may have just caught it, but we should be okay. I can clean
Okay.
that up. It's fine. Just so you know, if I apologies for anyone listening if that is worse than I think it is. All right then. What has been your proudest achievement in your VR journey?
Proudest achievement. Um, Giving me a moment to think.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. Again, open-ended question. No right or wrong answers with any of these.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just one of those like, I just have a problem with pride in
Sure.
general. And so it's at the end of the day, I'm trying to like reword your question in my head in a way
Hmm.
that I feel better about, which is something
Yeah.
close, like more closely on the line of like, what am I most pleased to have
Sure.
added into the world in some fashion, or that in retrospect I feel the best about. And I think at the end of the day, it's just the general thing of being able to create anything that is an expressive tool set for comedic delight that
Hmm.
people can share in. So it is much like the things that I enjoy consuming the most. it's the comedy of all of it. So actually,
Sure.
I'm glad I talked this out because it actually led me to the specific thing. It's the Sosigs. It's my agent that
Hmm.
I have come, my talking hot dog people, that all use my voice and variations of my voice doing funny voices. And the way in which that virtual meta character that is all at once, like performing a role, aware it is performing a role, aware that it is a game agent, speaking to the player as a meta agent, as trying to like find like the creation of, because it's very central to the one of the core ethics of the game, creating a character that, despite the fact that it is involved in violent play, that you are
Hmm.
shooting and dismembering it, is always reinforcing the context that you are playing, that there are no hard feelings. It is not in substantive pain. Any sort of hate that you might bring into that experience is utterly wasted because you cannot actually harm it. It
Hmm.
is a silly wiener that you're just playing with your wiener, and to as my way of sort of like semiotically undermining a lot of the vitriol that undercuts, that lays beneath certain types of violent play, because I don't
Sure.
believe in catharsis. And I think my understanding is that, like, cognitive science in general points to the fact that the common idea of catharsis that people have, that you can get something out in anger and that this is a constructive act that you have released a valve, is not actually true to my understanding. My
Okay.
understanding is that, in fact, all you're doing is reinforcing negative behavior and making yourself feel that way in that context more. You are simply practicing being an angry, hateful person in a context. And so, any way in which I can take the traditional combat game experience involving gun nerddom and things like that and make it something that, even if you come into it angry, you come out of it laughing instead, I think that's in the most microscopic way an improvement to the planet. And that it is a thing worth doing.
Cool. That's a really interesting take on that. I really like that. That's good. So that is section 2. That is all our VR and gaming questions. So you can calm yourself down without having to deal with any of that anymore. But what we're going to do now is, it's a questionnaire that was created by a French journalist called Bernard Pivot. It was popularised on the TV show Inside the Actors Studio. 10 questions. Very straightforward. Try not to think too much about the answer. First thing that pops into your head. Usually single words, or, if you want to ramble, please go ahead. So we'll start with the first one, which is, what is your favourite word?
Oh, wonderful.
What is your least favourite word?
Moist.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Discovery.
What turns you off?
The same thing.
What is your favourite curse word?
The sound of a word being beeped.
Okay, that's good. What sound or noise do you love?
Making a fart sound with my mouth.
Okay. What sound or noise do you hate?
The sound of sneakers screeching on a floor, like, especially if someone is like playing professional basketball. I don't
Okay,
loathe any sound more than sneaker squeak.
cool. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Running a food truck or a restaurant or a pop-up or anything related to that.
Okay. What profession would you not like to attempt?
Government.
Okay. And our final question for you today, Anton, is, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Gotcha!
Anton, that has been you behind the headset. Thank you ever so much for coming on. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
My pleasure. Thanks for
That's
having me.
very good. No, I really appreciate it. Do you want to let the people know where they can find you on the interwebs and things while you're here?
Oh yeah, I'm on Blue Sky now, also known as Good Twitter. At let me actually see what my name is.
We will put
Just
the link. The link will
yeah.
be in the description, so
Yeah.
that's where you can find Anton.
Anton at Blue Sky. I've got a link tree linked in my profile there. You can find the game that we work on, Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades on Steam. Yeah.
Cool. That's been it. Thank you very much for coming again. Really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for listening. Leave a comment, say hello, see if there's anywhere else you want to get involved. Give me a shout and we'll take it from there. But for now, bye.